Recording in progress.
All right. So good afternoon and welcome to the February 23rd, 2023 regular meeting of the San Diego Community Power Board of Directors. I am Joel LaCava, Chair of the Board and the representative for the City of San Diego. I want to welcome the members of the public listening in, community power staff and board members joining us today. I'll now call the February 23rd regular meeting of the Board of Directors of San Diego Community Power to order. Kimberly, will you please call the roll?
City of San Diego Representative,
LaCava present.
County of San Diego Representative. Imperial Beach Representative.
Here.
La Mesa Representative.
Here.
National City Representative.
Here.
Chula Vista Representative.
John McCann present.
Encinitas Representative. Kinsey here. We have a quorum.
Terrific. All right, if you would, please stand and we'll do the Pledge of Allegiance. And if you're able, and of your heart, ready to begin.
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, so we have a quorum. Next up is special presentations and introductions. I want to welcome Chris Stewart, our new IT associate. Chris, you want to say a few words about yourself?
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you guys for having me. So I hail from New Jersey. So anybody from the Jersey Shore here, like, let's connect and reminisce. And I'm got a huge theater background, and I've spent before the pandemic, last 5 years, doing improv comedy, stand up, you name it. If anyone's a fan of Buffy the Vampire Slayer, I did improvised Buffy the Vampire Slayer show. And now I'm doing IT, so glad to be here.
Natural progression.
Yeah, exactly.
That's quite a yes and.
Absolutely.
Well, good. Thank you, Chris. I know that's going to be a big help to the staff here to do that. So are there any other presentations or introductions, Kimberly?
No.
All right. So there was no closed session today and therefore no items to report. In terms of the agenda, there'll be a couple of minor corrections and we'll identify them when those agenda items come up. So let's next go to non-agenda public comment.
There are no written submitted comments and no hands raised.
All right. All right, let's move right on to the consent calendar. There are 8 items on the consent calendar. Are there any directors that would like to pull any items from the consent calendar?
Just wanted to offer a comment on item 7.
Please.
Happy to vote for it, but I did want to ask for staff to consider a downtown location for the office location after the termination of this. Most of government, a lot of government agencies are located downtown, and it allows people to get around of walking or taking transit or other things without having to drive a car. This is the first day this week I had to get my car because of this meeting. So I would just like to encourage people to consider that for in the future.
Fair comment.
I would triple to quadruple call it a comment. So 100% agree. That would be great.
That'd be great. Be great for, I think, a majority of the jurisdictions
Yeah.
here.
That's right. Well, certainly noted. I think staff heard that. So thank you, sir. Without any request to poll, do I have a motion to approve the consent calendar?
Motion to approve the consent calendar.
Mayor McCann and a second by Mayor Aguirre. So with that, Kimberly, please call the roll.
Director Aguirre, how do you vote?
Yes.
Director Hinsey, how do you vote?
Yes.
Director McCann, how do you vote?
Aye.
Director Parent, how do you vote?
Aye.
Director Yamani, how do you vote? Aye. Vice Chair Lawson Reamer, how do you vote?
Aye.
Chair LaCava, how do you vote?
Aye.
Motion carries with all directors voting yes.
So unanimously. All right, if anybody's taken a moment to look at the agenda, we have a very, very packed agenda. We have, I think we've tallied upwards of an hour and a half of just presentation time. So we're going to try to get through this efficiently, yet give you all enough time to really weigh in with any thoughts or concerns you might have on that. So let's start with item 9, approval of fiscal year 22-23 budget amendment. And I'll turn it over to Dr. Washington to present the item.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Mayor McCann, I don't know if you would like to make any opening remarks regarding item 9, the
If I could, Dr. Washington, and appreciate the chair's opportunity for me to speak. The Finance and Risk Committee received and reviewed the preliminary amended fiscal year 2022-23 budget on February 9th, 2023. The committee members present had several questions. The staff was able to go ahead and appropriately respond to all those questions presented. We want to commend the finance, Dr. Washington and his staff for providing us with the proper documentation, presentation, and being able to fully answer our questions. The committee is supportive of this item and unanimously has recommended advancing the item to the board for full approval. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. A couple of things. One, for the record, Vice Chair Losman Reamer is now part of the meeting. And there is a slight correction in the expense side that was originally published. As you see on the screen, the correct total is $772,078,710. So with that, you want to make your presentation?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair, Madam Vice Chair, Directors. Thank you all for your time and commitment to serving on the Board of Directors for San Diego Community Power. I'll be presenting for approval the fiscal year 2023 budget amendment as stated by the chair. The joint powers agreement under section 4.6.2 specifies that the board should adopt a budget on an annual basis to cover our fiscal reporting cycle from July 1st through June 30 of each fiscal year. The JPA section number 7.3.1 specifies that the board from time to time may review that budget and amend appropriately. So this is the item that we're presenting tonight. Advance the slide, please. So in June of 2023, the board adopted the budget as presented in the top row of this slide with the net revenue, as you can see, with associated total expenses with budgeted net position as approved. We're coming to the board this evening with an amendment that increases the net revenue as well as increase the total expenses, landing at a larger net position. This item with regard to revenues and expenses are directly reflective of the action that the board took at the January board meeting with setting our rates. Next slide. This slide presents the budget approval versus budget amendment comparison and the adjustments to those overarching categories. So essentially with this amended budget, our increase in revenue is going to increase to $220.8 million with a $76.2 million increase in energy costs, reflective of the volatility that we've experienced recently in the energy market, as well as an increase in our net position so that we're able to continue to build our reserve and hit our reserve targets based on our strategic plan. Next slide, please. This slide essentially provides a categoric comparison to the adopted budget to the amended budget. And as you can see, the cost of energy, increased. Overall, the non-energy expenses remained relatively stable. In fact, overall, we were able to experience at least a $1 million cost reduction in our non-energy costs compared to the adopted budget, compared to the amended budget. Next slide. This slide gives really a higher level breakout of the non-energy costs compared to the cost of energy. More specifically, I'd like to direct your attention down to the last three rows, the bottom three rows of this slide, where we see our days cash on hand exceeding 94, almost 95 days cash on hand compared to the adopted budget where we were under 30 days cash on hand. So this is again in line with our reserve building strategy to get us closer to those benchmarks of 90 days by the end of this fiscal year. And as you might recall from our rate setting discussion, where the target to hit our 180 days or exceed 180 days cash on hand is scheduled to occur around October of November of 2023. Really setting us up for fiscal stabilization and gives us the flexibility to respond fiscally to unexpected things that might occur as it relates to our budget in terms of revenues as well as unexpected expenses.
It's a pretty remarkably big difference between the net position and the adopted amended budget.
Thank you, Supervisor. Next slide, please. So this slide speaks specifically to the building out of our team. So we're continuing to grow and build our staff as we identify needs to bring on key positions so that we're able to effectively and efficiently provide the level of service and make sure that we have eyes on all of the various components or elements of our operation. So the top row, again, is a reflection of the personnel hiring strategy that was adopted in conjunction with the board back in June of 2022. The bottom row is a reflection of our actual hiring, at least through January, where you can see we've added budget comparison to the amended budget, 3 more full-time staff positions as we continue to identify those key roles to make sure that we are able to focus on our mission and carrying out our mission and keep in line and in focus with our vision. Next slide. This slide is a comparative analysis that we've done previously to really kind of give an idea of where we stack up compared to some other CCAs, with Clean Power Alliance being the most similar to our operation with regard to the number of customer counts and really focusing in on the non-energy cost comparison as well as the head count or the staff count for Clean Power Alliance as it compares to what we projected our customer accounts to reach by the end of this fiscal period and the number of staff positions that we are looking to bring on board to our staff. Therein lies the need to expand where we are in this space and ultimately in a larger space as we continue to grow and build out our staff and advance our operation. Next slide. So where are we? So if I could direct your attention to this slide, the right-hand arrow, this is where we are in our budget development cycle, in our budget development timeline. So we are before the board now doing a mid-year review of our budget, as well as pointing out the necessary amendments. The next step, if I could direct your attention back over to the left-hand part of the slide, beginning in February, which we've already started, it's the budget development process for our fiscal year 2024 budget season. Next slide. So that concludes my presentation. Again, the ask or the recommendation from the board is to seek approval for our fiscal year 2023 amended budget for a net revenue of $9,929,791,929 in terms of net revenues, with total operating expenses of $772,078,710. Mr. Chair.
Well, thank you for the presentation, Dr. Washington. Thank you, Mayor McCann of the committee, for your initial review of this. So I'll turn it over to the board members for a discussion or a motion on this.
I have a question.
Yes.
The numbers are really clear and the thank you is really helpful. So we can unpack a little bit more the drivers behind those, the differences in some of the energy costs that we saw.
So the energy costs, it's in Byron Bosberg.
Or really the revenue side, yeah.
On the revenue side. So the increase in the revenue side is pretty much driven by the rates that we set during the rate setting action at our last board meeting.
Okay, great. That's what I thought. Thank you.
Any other questions, or do I have a motion to?
Mr. Chair, I'd like to be able to make the motion to approve the fiscal year 2022-23 amended budget. So moved.
So moved.
I'll second that.
Second. Okay, with no further discussion or questions, Kimberly, can you call the vote?
Director Aguirre, how do you vote?
Yes.
Director Hensy, how do you vote?
Yes.
Director McCann, how do you vote?
Aye.
Director Parent, how do you vote?
Aye.
Director Yamani, how do you vote?
Aye.
Vice Chair Lawson Reamer, how do you vote?
Aye.
Chair LaCava, how do you vote?
Aye.
Motion carries with all directors voting yes.
Terrific. Thank you again, Dr. Watson, for the good work and all the team that comes together to pull that information. Now we'll move on to item 10, recent changes in Brown Act teleconferencing and format of future community powered meetings. I'll turn that over to, I think, Nick, you're going to handle that one.
Yes, thank you,
All right.
Mr. Chair, and good evening, board members. So the item before you this evening is to talk about recent changes to the Brown Act in terms of teleconferencing and the format of future SDCP meetings. And I'll revisit the recommendation or what we're seeking direction on at the end, but if we can go to the next slide. So as many of you know, the Brown Act generally requires the legislative bodies members to be in person for their meetings. The Brown Act has long contained a standard, what we call standard teleconferencing rules that allow members of a legislative body to teleconference into a meeting if certain requirements are met. Those are that the teleconference location must be stated on the agenda. The agenda must be posted at the teleconference location. The teleconference location must be open for the public to attend and comment from that location. And a majority of the body must participate from within the agency's boundaries. And in addition, all votes must be by roll call. When the COVID-19 pandemic hit, those teleconferencing rules were not really feasible for public agencies to be able to conduct their meetings because most people, A, didn't want to identify their home address or allow the public into their homes to participate in meetings. So those rules didn't really fit. So at the start of COVID-19, the state has allowed an expanded form of teleconferencing, first through executive orders from the governor, and then legislation, which is we generally refer to as AB 361, which was adopted in 2021. Now that the governor is planning to end the COVID-19 state of emergency as of next week on February 28th, SDCP is planned for a return to in-person meetings after that date. And specifically the resolution for the meetings for this year identified that from March going forward, the meetings of SDCP will take place, the board will take place at a City of San Diego facility in Kearney Mesa, and I can, staff and I can provide more information on that. But we wanted to talk about the teleconferencing options available to the board after a return to in-person meetings. So as I mentioned earlier, there are the standard teleconferencing rules under the Brown Act. Those remain an option. And then in addition to that, there is AB 2449, which was legislation that went into effect as of January 1st to provide a new and different type of teleconferencing that is somewhat similar to what we have been doing and the way AB 361 works, but there are some key differences as well. So AB 2449 teleconferencing allows teleconferencing only under limited circumstances. Those are just cause, and the items for just cause are listed here on the screen. So childcare, caregiving for close family members, contagious illness, physical or mental disability, or travel on behalf of the agency or another agency that you're a member of. And then the other type of, if we go back one second, and then the other situation in which this type of teleconferencing can be used would be an emergency, which is defined as a physical or family medical emergency. Go to the next slide, please. So in order to use this type of teleconferencing, the legislative body member has to comply with certain requirements, and the agency has to comply with certain requirements as well. So for the legislative body member, the notable requirements are that you must notify the legislative body as soon as possible of the need to teleconference, including the general reason for it. Number two, during the meeting, like in this setting and before any action is taken, if you were teleconferencing, you must disclose if there's anybody 18 or over in the room with you and your relationship to that person. And then the member also has to use both audio and visual technology to participate. So cameras on the whole time. Next slide, please. In terms of the requirements that the agency has to comply with in order for this type of teleconferencing to be used at a particular meeting. The majority of the body must participate in person from a single location. So this means that it can only be used by a handful of members of the legislative body in a particular meeting. The rest of the members have to be located in person at the meeting location. For the emergency provision to be used, the legislative body has to approve for the member to teleconference. That's an action that can be taken at the very beginning of the meeting, regardless of whether it's on the agenda or not. So if it's something that comes up very last minute, and there's a notice of an emergency and a need to participate using that method, the board can act on it even if it's not on the agenda itself. The next item is that the public must be able to participate in the meeting virtually if a member of the legislative body is. And that also means the ability to provide live public comments. And then an additional requirement, and this is similar to AB 361, if the public's access to the meeting is disrupted technologically, the meeting cannot proceed. So it has to actually stop until the public access and ability to comment to the meeting is restored. And then finally, once again, under this type of conferencing, all votes must be by roll call. There are limits to the use of this type of teleconferencing. So AB 2449 teleconferencing, the just cause provision can only be used twice per calendar year by each member per legislative body. And then overall, meaning just cause plus emergency circumstances, a member can only use it for up to 3 consecutive months and no more than 20% of the agency's regular meetings. So this slide shows a few of the pros and cons of the standard teleconferencing and the AB 2449 teleconferencing. For the standard teleconferencing, some of the pros are that it can be used under any circumstance. You don't have to have a particular justification for doing it. There's no limit on the number of times it can be used. It doesn't require an express video component or participation via video. And there's no requirement to stop the meeting if the public feed is disrupted when using this type of teleconferencing. The cons of this standard approach are that it requires prior notice to staff to make sure that the information can be included on the agenda, such as the address from where you'll be participating, as well as ensuring proper posting at the location. And then in addition, because the location is on the agenda and the public can attend from that location, the reality is that personal residences or other private locations are seldom used. It has to be a location that the public has access to and that you're comfortable with the public participating from that location with you. In terms of AB 2449 teleconferencing, the pros are that the notice of the need to teleconference can be provided up until the time of the meeting. The law requires that it be provided as soon as possible, but if something last minute comes up and one of the circumstances is in place, it can be used at the last minute. It also does not require the teleconferencing location to be stated on the agenda to allow the public to participate from that location. In terms of the cons of AB 2449 teleconferencing, it can only be used under limited circumstances. There are limits that I talked about. It requires the use of video conferencing, and then the meeting must be stopped if the public feed is disrupted. So staff and our office is seeking direction on the following questions. Does the board desire for the board committees and the community advisory committee to be able to use the standard Brown Act teleconferencing rules or AB 2449 teleconferencing or both? And then a second separate but somewhat related question for the board is, does the board desire for board, committee, and CAC meetings to continue to be hybrid for members of the public, where by default members of the public can participate virtually pretty much at every meeting? Or does the board want to go back to a situation where participation just generally has to be in public unless a member is participating under AB 2449? So I'm happy to answer any questions about the teleconferencing, but before I do that, I will note there are at least 3 bills that have been introduced in the legislature to once again revise the teleconferencing rules. One of those, SB 411 would expand teleconferencing and make it easy to use for appointed bodies like the board, the CAC, et cetera. It wouldn't apply to directly elected bodies like the bodies that you're directly elected to. So we can expect a potential change next year, depending on what happens in the legislative session.
What bill is that?
SB 411.
It's introduced by the LA delegation, I believe, for their neighborhood councils to participate virtually because of the way the city's set up. But it'll apply to all appointed boards, commissions, and whatever the definition is for councils, but not for cities and county bodies.
And we don't, go ahead.
Down here. So we're moving to a new location for our next meeting and this is pretty technologically savvy what we have going on here and we're confident we could provide that same level of access.
Staff has worked very hard. And the effort on community space shows, staff has worked very hard with the city of San Diego to make sure that the meeting location is appropriate both for the in-person needs as well as the ability for the public to continue to access virtually if the board desires to continue doing that.
Yeah, that's great. And just a second question for the Community Advisory Committee. Do they often have members of the public who are participating in those meetings?
I think a handful, but I wouldn't be the best person to speak to it.
Victoria is not here. She's presenting later.
I can speak high level with regard to that. There are usually some attendees. I don't know that there's a large body that typically attends those meetings, but from time to time, there are public members that will attend those.
Okay, well, I'll just state my opinion and then we can have a discussion, but I think it's important to continue providing the hybrid option and to allow members of the public to do that as well, considering that we do span such a huge regional geographic area and that also the Community Advisory Committee members could do that as well and not have to drive a long distance.
The members of the CAC will still have to participate in person, like similar to board members. But if there's either of the teleconferencing options could be used depending on the circumstances and if they meet the requirements, it could be used for them.
Yeah, and
But members of the public.
members of the public could call in and they don't have
Correct.
to show up at their meeting to
Absolutely.
participate. Yeah, I think that's really helpful.
Vice Chair.
Yeah, I want to say a couple things. First of all, I strongly support us continuing to make the hybrid option available for the members of the public. I think that's very clear to me. I think the real question that feels not clear is which of the two options regarding a board member hybrid participation makes more sense for this body. I think we certainly want, my view is we really want to encourage as much flexibility as possible. So we definitely want at least one of those options. But I'm not sure if we want both of them or only one, and if it's only one, which one? And I'm actually pretty familiar with this question because we've been grappling with it as well in the county. So I might, it was a little fast, but I already knew all that stuff. So I think it would be helpful for me, at least, as we kind of think about that second question. I would love to know from my colleagues what your needs are. Like, do you anticipate being hybrid often? Is it more like an emergency? Do you think you'll know ahead of time? Are you thinking you'll do it at your house? Would you be in a library? Because that's what's really driving this, right? Like if you think you're going to be in your house and you're only going to be hybrid because you have some like just cause or emergency situation, it's not going to be very often, then the new rules make sense. If you think you're going to be often or always hybrid and you're going to make a plan ahead of time and be in like a public library and not in your house, then the old rules make sense. So I don't know if that was clear to everyone, but I think for me to figure out which makes, I would love to know from my colleagues, like how you anticipate using this. So if that would be okay.
And Nate, we have an option to have both teleconference options.
Correct.
My preference would be to allow both, and then people can just, I don't know when I'll need it, what circumstances I will need it, right?
In discussions with staff, we realize there might be awkward situations where one member wants to use one type of teleconferencing and another wants to use another, and we might have to make sure that all of the bases are covered under the Brown Act for that to occur, or that we have enough members who are participating in person and or within the jurisdiction for all of the requirements to be met. So I guess I would just say that there might be a little bit of back and forth if there are multiple requests to make sure that the Brown Act requirements can be met, but that we do have agencies that are trying to accommodate both types of teleconferencing.
Yeah, so my state of preference would be, to allow for both, and then to continue to allow public hybrid participation remotely.
That's great.
For me, I think I would be happy to go with both. But I'm just conscious about potentially taxing staff and having to figure all of that out. Personally, if I don't like the second option as much because it feels a little bit restrictive. Like you don't think you're gonna need it and then suddenly you have a family emergency or you have to go take care of a meeting or something and it just feels a little bit restrictive to me. I plan on being in person most of the time, but I'd like to have the flexibility. So that being said, I mean, if everybody feels comfortable with having both, I'm supportive of that too.
And you didn't push back, so we could actually do both. Somebody could operate under the old Brown Act where you advertise your personal space, and we could, and some of the people could actually do 2449 with the more restrictive rules.
With some caveats that you can't have everyone doing one or the other. You have to
Right.
have a certain number. I don't know how many for our body, but a certain number either here or with it. So I think that was, as long as we're not all going all over
Yeah.
the country at the same time.
Right. So we still have to have 4 people show up in
In
person.
person.
Yeah.
If the 2449 teleconferencing is used, if let's say there are multiple members using the old school teleconferencing, as long as a majority are participating from within the boundaries, then that could be used.
Let's assume that's not going to happen. Mayor McCann. Sorry.
Yes. Thank you, Honorable Chair. I again want to express, and I think most of us agree that we should still be able to have hybrid input from the public. We do span pretty much the entire county and want to make sure that we are there where public members can participate and don't have to always drive to the specific location where we are at. But I would recommend that we would do both options for the telecommuting. My preference obviously would be to go with the standard Brown Act. There are times, as I or my colleagues on the city council in Chula Vista, we're a city of almost 300,000. We may have something going on, but I might not be able to drive there. I should be able to be in person on most of the occasions, but I can just go ahead and notify staff, be able to have it in one of the conference rooms that's open to the public, to be able to still participate. But my recommendation, and I don't know if we're ready for a motion, would be able to use both options. My only concern about the second option is that if there is some technicality or technical difficulty, that would stop the meeting at that point in time. I understand in the IT world, many times we have disruptions, and I know that, I'm sure when we finally have somebody do the section option, we might run into Murphy's Law. It might run into an issue where maybe their feed goes down or there's a technical issue, and it would be challenging to be able to have to wait till we get that connectivity restored to start the meeting again. Thank you, Your Honor, Chair, and I'd be happy to make the motion unless there is still additional discussion.
I don't see any other hands going up. I do want to check. Do we have any members
We
of
do
the
not have
public?
any public.
Okay.
I guess one question, I mean, I support the motion, but just wanted us to ask staff or council, like, if we go ahead and adopt this as policies, do we also want a parallel policy about notifying staff if our intent to participate remotely at a certain point, in advance or something like that, not necessarily like a legal obligation, but sort of like we all agree that, we're not gonna decide day of whether or not we're gonna attend, right? Emergencies accepted, of course, but
That is something that I think would be a best practice, is to have a policy to kind of deal with some of those day-to-day real world issues in administering this and help for the staff and manage expectations and make sure that everyone's on the same page. So we could bring a policy back reflective of what the board decides this evening. Vice Chair.
Yeah, just a question. What is the legal obligation regarding noticing? Because I think that actually governs a lot of this, right? So we don't need a notice if it's an emergency or just cause, but for the old rule, we do. What is that legal obligation?
For the old rule, simply make sure that there's time to put the address on the agenda and make sure that it can be posted at the location and time and do all of that legwork. It probably, at least by the agenda deadline, but normally realistically, that means probably a couple days before at least, depending on what the location is. In terms of the AB 2449 teleconferencing, the law requires notice to the legislative body as soon as you're aware of the circumstances of needing to teleconference that way. But that can be up until the time of the meeting, depending on when you know. So I think those are the legal obligations.
So, yeah, so I think, it'd be good so I don't know when the staff needs to have that information for an agenda. So that would be something that should be put in such a policy, right? So like I can add things to my agenda in La Mesa, and I know that like it has to be like by noon on Wednesday, like, so you should just tell us what that is. And then I'd be open to suggestions about for the 2499, getting that about like how far in advance we need to communicate to the staff, again, accepting emergencies, right? So because we could adopt for ourselves a policy sort of saying we're going to give more notice than's strictly required by the statute, right? And we probably ought to. That way people have a day or two to make sure that we have in-person quorum.
And we're gonna want advance notice, because if 3 people signify they're not going to be here and that 4th one calls up and said, yeah, I'm not gonna be here either, then we're in trouble. And so it is gonna be a little bit of first come, first serve. So hopefully that'll motivate people to do it. So I think you would prefer at least by Friday before. Or
We
even
try to
earlier?
have everything posted by 5 o'clock on Friday.
So,
But there is some work that goes into it, so we probably need to even back it up a day,
okay. So maybe the Wednesday before, how about that?
I would say, yeah.
One other question, Chair. So if we do go forward with adopting both options and on our agendas, will there always be a hybrid option for the public to participate, even if we are all participating in person? Oh, that's nice.
Yes, we've set it up where every meeting we have, whether it's strategic planning or board meeting, we will always have remote participation option for the general public.
That's so great. Okay.
That's terrific. Okay, I'm not seeing any other questions. Mayor McCann, you want to take a shot at the motion?
Yes, Honorable Chair, I would like to provide direction to include both options for telecommunications, as well as maintain our hybrid option for public input. So move.
Second, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, Councilmember Yamani, excuse me, on that. So everybody understand? Okay, I think we do. Let's call the vote, Kimberly.
Director Aguirre, how do you vote?
Yes.
Director Hensy, how do you vote?
Yes.
Director McCann, how do you vote?
Aye.
Director Parent, how do you vote?
Aye.
Director Yamani, how do you vote?
Aye.
Vice Chair Lawson Reamer, how do you vote?
Aye.
Chair LaCava, how do you vote?
Aye.
Motion carries with all directors voting yes.
All right, thank you, Nick, for the presentation and navigating the interpretation of the law. Certainly, we'll keep an eye and see what Sacramento may do in terms of moving faster on any of these changes, or how this works out for us.
Maybe an easier conversation next year.
That should be us. And we can certainly be nimble if we see problems. So let's move on to item 11. Updates to the board compensation and reimbursement policy. I believe Dr. Washington presenting this.
I certainly can, but I believe Nick or Ryan are.
Oh, my apologies. You're right. My apologies.
So I'm handling this one as well. So this is an update to the board compensation and reimbursement policy. I'm excited for this.
That's up right here.
Last February, the board adopted a board compensation and reimbursement policy that authorized per diem compensation for the board for attending board meetings and reimbursement of reasonable and necessary expenses. For example, when attending pre-authorized travel on behalf of the agency. Later amendments during the year authorized reimbursement of certain childcare expenses during director's attendance at special board meetings that are not during this regular time, as well as per diem compensation for attending committee meetings. The board per diem compensation amount is $150, and that's consistent with Sandag's and MTS's board compensation. Currently, the Community Advisory Committee, which is the only board appointed committee of the agency that is not composed of board members, they currently do not receive compensation for meeting attendance. But with the return to in-person meetings, CAC members will spend additional time and transportation costs to attend CAC meetings. So there's a discussion at the staff level of bringing an item to the board to consider per diem compensation for CAC members and other members of board appointed. So the proposal before the board this evening is to amend the board compensation and reimbursement policy to do a number of things. Primarily to authorize compensation of $100 per meeting for board appointed committee members, including the Community Advisory Committee. That amount is consistent with what Sandag provides to members of its policy advisory committees. The second thing it would do would be to make compensation subject to the same limits as directors. That's 4 times per month. In practice, though, the CAC typically meets only once per month. And there might be a rare occasion where it meets twice. For example, if it's a joint meeting with the board of directors. Third is to make CAC members eligible for reimbursement of childcare expenses for special non-regular CAC meetings similar to directors. It would express, the policy would now expressly note the legal requirement that directors and CAC members, because they receive compensation or reimbursement of expenses, are required to take AB 1234 ethics training and sexual harassment prevention training, which is required by the government code. Let's see, fifth, it would clarify that alternate directors and board appointed committee members are eligible for reimbursements if pre-approved by the board, consistent with the other provisions of the policy. And then it would rename the policy as the board and committee compensation and reimbursement policy. So I'm happy to answer any questions, but the recommended action is to adopt the resolution number 2023-blank, renaming the policy, amending it to include board appointed advisory committees, including the Community Advisory Committee, and making the other changes that I discussed.
Great. Thanks, Nick. Do we have any public comment on this?
There's no public comment.
All right, great. Members, board members.
Yeah, just one question that on that slide, it said that the compensation for alternates was dependent on pre-approval by the board. Does that mean, so like if my alternate comes here, does the board have to take some sort of special action to make them eligible for compensation?
No, that item is specific just to reimbursement of expenses. So for example, if they were authorized to travel to a conference on behalf of STCP, that's what it is a clarification to.
Okay.
Currently under the policy, alternates are already eligible to receive per diem compensation. So for example, if your alternate attended tonight's meeting, he would be eligible.
Okay, I just want everyone to, if you see Jack from Lemaitre's, let him know I'm looking out.
With that, yes.
Just a quick comment to say thank you. This was important to me to be able to incentivize people who might not typically be able to take part in advisory committee, compensate them for their time and childcare if needed. And we suggested that with Director Yamani's support at the orientation, and you've already made it happen. So great work and thank you.
Yeah, this is great. I know we'll get a report. We lost one of our CAC members. And so, and it's been challenging to fill those vacant positions. This will help. So any other comments? Otherwise, do we have a motion to move the staff recommendation?
I will move approval of staff's recommendation.
I second.
All right. So we have a motion by Hensy, second by Yamani. Without any further questions, please call for the vote.
Director Aguirre, how do you vote?
Yes.
Director Hensy, how do you vote?
Yes.
Director McCann, how do you vote?
Aye.
Director Parent, how do you vote?
Aye.
Director Yamani, how do you vote?
Aye.
Vice Chair Lawson Reamer, how do you vote?
Aye.
Chair LaFava, how do you vote?
Aye,
Motion carries with all directors voting yes.
terrific. And this is a great example, as member Hensy pointed out, how quickly staff move when they hear the recommendations from the board. So thank you for that. Thank you for bringing that up. And it is key. So we'll move on to item 12, approval of a new electrification rate, time of use electrical. So I think we have Lucas Utah to present this item.
Thank you, Chair. Good evening, Chair, Vice Chair, Directors. I am here before you to seek approval of the new electrification residential rate called TEOE elect for electrification. The reason why this is a standalone rate item, as an extension of what you all approved in January, is because the board did approve our 2023 rates on January 23rd. SDG&E rolled out this new rate on January 31st. And so as of a few minutes ago, we already have 4 customers who have transitioned over to this new rate. And so we do need the board to approve this rate so that they can get the intended value proposition of 3% savings and a higher energy renewable content to allow for us to build them accordingly. Next slide, please. So what is this new rate about? It's a residential rate that supports behind the meter technologies, including electric vehicles, including battery storage and electric heat pump. Next slide, please. So high level background, the rate came into being on January 31st after the board had already approved our rates for 2023. Again, the rate is meant to spur greenhouse gas reduction by promoting electrification of behind the meter technologies such as EVs, energy storage, batteries or devices, electric heat pump for either water heating or climate control. And this rate is available to both those customers that qualify for care and or medical baseline and those that don't. Next slide, please. So what is this rate all about? It's obviously for residential customers. And again, the item before you today would allow customers who want to opt in to this rate. So those 4 customers that have already done so, as of a few minutes ago today, to realize the benefit of getting more renewable energy. Obviously, at the board approved 3% by proposition, which this board approved in January 2023. There is currently a cap of 10,000 customers who may take service on this rate. And the customers who elect to opt in to this rate will be charged a flat $16 monthly service fee by SDG&E, in addition to the utility distribution company time of use charges. And then there is actually a one important caveat to note, which is usually when customers opt into a new rate, SDG&E requires them to stay in that rate for 12 months, but because this is relatively new, they have made a provision to allow customers to switch back to the rate that they were on previously before opting into this rate, which is an added benefit. If a customer goes in and they're like, maybe I don't like this rate nearly as much, they can always go back to the rate that they were previously on. And that actually concludes my presentation. On to the next slide, please.
Great. Well, thank you, Lucas, for that. Any public comment?
No public comment?
Quiet tonight. I'll turn over to the board members. Any questions? So I'll ask a couple if I don't hear it.
Absolutely.
So this is, as you said, brand new rate, and because SDG&E has set it up, and yet SDG&E is still part of the conversation on the electrical charges.
Yes.
So in addition to the charge that we get for distribution, transmission and distribution, it would be also a $16.
So that $16 monthly minimum charge is actually on the transmission and delivery.
Oh, okay.
It's not on the commodity side.
Oh, okay. So
What we're asking for from the board is to approve the commodity rates.
right. Okay.
Equivalent.
Okay. And then we'll do some, is there, it seemed like there was a limitation in terms of who would be qualified to use it. So do we have to go and verify if they have an electric vehicle or heat pump or?
That's an excellent question. So in terms of the verification of the technology to allow the customer to opt in, that process is handled by SDG&E. And this is not only inherent to this rate, it's for every rate. Customers don't come to SDCP to switch their rate option from one to the other. They go to SDG&E first. SDG&E puts in the rate that the customer wants, and that automatically flows to us on the back end.
Okay, good to know. Any other board member questions, or do I have a motion to move the staff recommendation? So moved.
A second.
Fair. Thank you, Gary. Okay, we have a motion to move the staff recommendation by Parent and second by Gary. So Kimberly, please call the vote.
Director Geary, how do you vote?
Yes.
Director Hensy, how do you vote?
Yes.
Director McCann, how do you vote?
Aye.
Director Parent, how do you vote?
Aye.
Director Yamani, how do you vote?
Aye.
Vice Chair Lawson Reamer, how do you vote?
Aye.
Chair LaCava, how do you vote?
Aye.
Motion carries with all directors voting yes.
Okay, thank you. Now we come to the more fun part of our agenda, the partnership agreements. We'll start off with item 13, which is the partnership agreement with the San Diego Padres for the 23-24 season. And we have Lee Friedman. He's remote.
Thank you, Chair LaCava, and good evening, board members. It's my pleasure to be here tonight. I have the next 3 items for you, and as Chair LaCava said, these hopefully are the fun ones for the evening. We'll be discussing on item 13, approval of the partnership agreement with the San Diego Padres for the 2023 and 2024 seasons. Next slide, please. So I want to start off with a bit of a recap of the 2022 season. It was a fantastic season. If you're a fan of the Padres, I think hopefully this room agrees. But from our perspective as a sponsor and getting in-game marketing, wanted to touch a little bit on some of the great stats from last year. First and foremost, average in-game park attendance just under 37,000 fans per game, which is ranked second highest in franchise history and 5th overall for the MLB, for a total regular season attendance of just under 3 million. So incredible year from a fan perspective as well. Petco Park, as I'm sure you're all aware, is one of the greatest ballparks in the country and was actually just voted as America's #1 ballpark by USA Today. And we couldn't agree more. It's ranked, the Padres are ranked #1 in MLB for follower engagement on their social media and Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. And then last year, which was absolutely incredible, the Padres opted up to Power 100, becoming Power 100 champions. And Petco Park is the first 100% renewably powered ballpark in the National League. So an incredible, just incredible for the city to have such a great asset that so many people go to that's at 100% renewable power. On this slide, you'll see a little bit from our Power 100 champion event. We hosted a press conference announcing the Padres opting up to 100% renewable power, and also honored our other Power 100 champions who we invited to attend at the press conference. Our former chair was able to throw out a ceremonial first pitch. We'll get a little bit into what we've got for next season. We'll see who amongst all of you may want to throw out a first pitch this year. And we even had a VIP speaker, Mayor Todd Gloria, come. Next slide. Another asset that was new to last year was a game day giveaway. The San Diego Community Power was the sponsor of the Fernando Tatis Jr. hat, which was given out to 35,000 fans on June 8th. It included a lot of pre and post media. Of course, we would have all wished that Fernando Tatis Jr. played last year, but we're excited this year, obviously, to have him come back and really complete the team. We were able to activate a booth at the ballpark during this hat giveaway. And if you haven't received yours yet, please let us know. We still have some extras from last year. Next slide. So I want to get into the highlights of the 2023 and 2024 season sponsorship. We decided to go for a multi-year sponsorship for a couple of reasons. One, it helps keep the cost down. Two, we've seen such great return on this investment over the last 2 years that we wanted to make sure that we were locked in for the next 2 years with the incredible assets that we've had both in and out of stadium. First, I want to talk about some of the highlights that we're maintaining. We are the Tonight's Light sponsor of the San Diego Padres during the pregame show. Petco Park flashes its lights, and SDCP is announced as the Tonight's Light sponsor, being their renewable energy provider. We also are maintaining all of our social media and marketing assets from previous sponsorship agreements as well, including in-stadium branding on the grandstand video board and all LED signage, as well as the L-Bar branding that plays in the in-park TVs. New to this year, we have a couple of great things. Fixed home plate padding for one game, which we will pick probably if we can, a Padres-Dodgers game. Sorry, Byron. And also want a great in-stadium asset is going to get new branding along select ballpark escalators, specifically calling out Petco Park as being powered by 100% renewable power by San Diego Community Power. We'll also be creating a crowd activation called the Energy Meter. You see a sample of the design below. This was prior to our becoming our asset was the noise meter. It will now be named the Energy Meter, and will measure the energy and the loudness of the fans at the stadium. We'll also be doing another game day giveaway. This year we've selected the performance hat. Unfortunately, there were no player hats this year to choose from the ballpark caps, but the Performance Hat is going to be a really popular game day giveaway based on previous metrics, and we're really excited to have our logo on that as well. Additionally, we're going to have more chances to interact with fans at Petco Park with activation kiosks and community booth activation, as well as activation during Petco Park's Health and Wellness Expo. And we're also adding to this year the ability to use the Pod Squad and have a Friar appearance, which also includes some ceremonial items such as a first pitch. So I don't know which one of you will have it this year, but maybe start warming up those arms. The total cost will be $250,000 for fiscal year 2023, and then $260,000, a $10,000 escalator for fiscal year 2024. Next slide. So the recommendation is to approve the partnership agreement with the San Diego Padres for the 2023 and 2024 seasons.
All right, thank you, Lee. Great work in pulling all that together, enjoying the success of last year. Kimberly, with any public comment?
No public comment?
Okay, so assuming there's no Dodger fans are going to speak up at this point, any questions by board members, or do I have a motion to move the staff recommendation?
Motion to remove the staff recommendation, go Padres.
All right, I think the mayor beat you out there. So we have a motion by Mayor McCann. Do I have a second? Do you want to do a second? All right, any other comments? Not hearing any. Kimberly, please call the vote.
Director Geary, how do you vote?
Yes.
Director Hensy, how do you vote?
Yes.
Director McCann, how do you vote?
Oh, there. There we go.
Oh.
Nice.
Director McCann, how do you vote?
Aye.
Director Perry, how do
Nice.
you vote?
Hi, go Padres.
Director Yamani, how do you vote?
Yes.
Vice Chair Lawson Reamer, how do you vote?
Go Pots.
Yeah,
Chair LaCava, how do you vote?
aye,
Motion carries with all directors voting yes.
terrific. All right, we'll come back to Lee because we've got a partnership agreement with the San Diego Wave for 2023 and 2024.
Next slide, please. And we can move to the next one as well. Thank you, Chair LaCava. So, when we first established our relationship with the Padres, just a little bit of history here, we wanted to make sure that we were also looking at other markets here. And again, the idea behind these partnerships is associating our brand with really respected organizations that build that community pride. And for the next two items, but specifically for the one I'm talking about right now, I think we're all super impressed and very proud of the great work that these new soccer teams have brought to the San Diego region. And SD Wave, which had their inaugural season last year, absolutely incredible, made it to their playoffs and had another incredible year. I also see in the audience that we've got a representative from the SD Wave operational team here as well, Alyssa. So if there are any specific questions for the SD Wave that I can't answer, she may be able to answer them for you. But just again, as a season recap, SD Wave was playing out of Torero Stadium in USD until the end of their season last year, where they moved over to Snapdragon Stadium as one of the first tenants. And we'll continue that relationship with Snapdragon Stadium in the near future. Their average attendance at Snapdragon was a very impressive 25,000 fans. And I don't know if any of you have had the opportunity to attend an SD Wave game, but the fan activation is absolutely incredible. Very much a traditional football cheering, soccer cheering section, and a really engaged and very passionate fan base. That can be seen, I think, first and foremost by the engagement that SD Wave has already had within the community in just 1 year. They're first in social engagement and newsletter reach for the National Women's Soccer League and follower growth. They've got incredible in-stadium marketing already, over 680,000 impressions, the vast majority of that just in the last 3 games they played at Snapdragon Stadium. They had incredible fan activations through the Fan Fest with over 5 million impressions in social media and 2 million video views. One of the most impressive newsletter campaigns as well, really high click-through rate and open rate, which is great because we advertise and market in that newsletter. And then SD Wave, which is a tenant of Snapdragon, so is not the account owners there, but did opt up all of their operational and commercial buildings that are eligible for service in SDCP territory, and so are also Power 100 champions of ours, and we're the official energy provider of the San Diego Wave. Next slide, please. We had a great flip the switch event with SD Wave. we were able to bring out our executive team and the SD Waves executive team to do an on-the-field ceremony where we flipped the switch to bring SD Wave up to 100% renewable power with 18,000 fans in attendance of that game. Great social media and press release, ton of impressions, and a great engagement rate as well. Next slide. We also did several activations at SD Wave games, both at FanFest and Match Day activation. We were able to use that time to get additional survey responses for the CPP, which was incredibly valuable for us, and handed out a bunch of promotional items, talked to a lot of fans, had a great time interacting with the thousands of people who stopped by, and helped build our name idea and positive association. So you'll see in the next slide that we've added quite a bit more when it comes to the sponsorship for the 2023 and 2024 seasons in terms of game day activations. So first, a couple of highlights. We are keeping pretty much the same marketing and media. We're changing a little bit around when and where our creative assets will play during the in-stadium game, mostly just to align better with what we think is a better fan experience. But additional to the contract this year and next year will be a player appearance, which we're really excited for, to get engagement, specifically around the idea of sustainability at a future community-based event. We're going to be doing additional match day and game day boothing activations. We saw a ton of success interacting with fans through those game day activations. We're also going to be committed to building out community-based programming that we'll do in concert with the SD Wave, specific to sustainability. And that's a great way for us to also use the good name and the assets that SD Wave bring to the table as we go out to the community to share who we are and what we do. We will have digital field board and Interbowl LED ribbon board signage like we did last year. We'll also have the ability to do a co-branded promotional item to be determined once we approve this contract. We'll be able to sit down with the Wave and actually build out a creative idea for what type of promotional item we would like to give out, maybe a hat, a scarf, or a shirt. And then we'll still have inclusion on the SD Wave website banner and newsletter, as well as the use of SD Wave trademarks as designation as the official renewable energy partner of San Diego Wave FC. I think what's really wonderful this year, specifically, especially as we're doing another enrollment, is that it's the Women's World Cup this year as well. So we've got several members of the SD Wave team who may be playing for the United States in the World Cup, which again brings great attention and pride to the team that's being built here, and additional attention to San Diego Community Power as the official renewable energy provider for the San Diego Wave. Next slide. So the recommendation is to approve the partnership agreement with the San Diego Wave for the 2023 and 2024 seasons. And it's $130,000 for fiscal year 2023, and then $150,000, a $20,000 escalator for the 2024 season.
Great. Thank you, Lee, and thank you for the good work in pulling this whole thing together. Any public comment?
No public comment.
Public comment. All right, turn it over to board members. Any questions? Will you make a motion?
No, sir, I have a question.
Yes.
Age bracket of the viewers for this leagues. And then it says here 2023 130 and 2024 150. Is that a 2-year contract that we're doing now?
Can you
So
hear
it's
that?
again, it's a 2020, like the previous item that we just approved. It will be a contract for the 2023 season, and then a contract for the 2024 season.
And then you had a question about the age bracket.
Age bracket of the viewers or the fans? What's the demographics?
Did you hear that, Lee?
Yeah, so the question was around the age bracket or the demographics for the fans.
Yes.
Yeah, so there is, I want to say that it's in the backup materials that was provided along with the staff report. But the attendance is what was in the presentation. It was an average attendance at the Snapdragon Stadium of 25,000. I do have, as I said before, in the audience, a member of the SD Wave operational team, Alyssa. If the question is more specific about the age brackets of the folks who are watching SD Wave, Alyssa may have that information. And I think she's raising her hand right now.
Okay.
Alyssa, you can go ahead and speak.
There we go. Hi, all. How's it going? Appreciate your time today. So the question is around in-stadium attendance, correct? Yes. So it's primarily millennials and Gen Z make up about 65% of our audience. A lot of families with kids, I think it's 52% have children in their household. Anything else specific around?
No, thank you. Thank you. These are millennials, these are not ratepayers.
Millennials are in their 40s now.
Well. They do.
I have a few here.
I'm just saying that some millennials still live with mom and dad.
Yeah. Good point. I think you had a question, Vice Chair, or comment? Okay.
I had a comment.
Yes, Mayor Geary.
I think it's incredibly exciting because especially the additional added value of the exposure of the Women's Cup, it was so popular. What was it? Last year?
Yeah.
This is just gonna blow up. So I think it's a lot of bang for a buck, I would say, given that the price is a lot lower than the TUD. So I'm excited.
Yeah.
I'm also excited. I think this is I was surprised by I wasn't that surprised because I went to UCSD when women's soccer was like excellent there, right? And so I was surprised then that there was a lot of interest, but no longer surprised that there's a lot of interest around it. So.
We have to do a 3-year contract right away, Mr.
Right.
Chairman. Okay.
Do you want to make a motion?
Yeah.
Okay.
I'll stick it.
1 second. By Vice Chair Lawson Reamer. And,
Second.
Oh, we got a second already, Mayor. But with that, if there's no other questions or comments, Kimberly, please call the vote.
Director Aguirre, how do you vote?
Yes.
Director Hensy, how do you vote?
Yes.
Director McCann, how do you vote?
Aye.
Director Parent, how do you vote?
Aye.
Director Yamani, how do you vote?
Nay.
Vice Chair Lawson Reamer, how do you vote?
Yes.
Chair LaCava, how do you vote?
Aye.
Motion carries with all directors voting yes, except for Director Yamani voting nay.
All right. Okay, but Willie's coming back one more time. And this is for the Loyal.
Yes, thank you, Chair. Last one for me. I wanted to make a note that Nick Miranda with the SD Loyal is in the attendance here. He's a VP over on the operational side for San Diego Loyal. As I mentioned in the previous item, we wanted to make sure that we were extending our reach to different corners of San Diego, trying to get as many folks who are interested in the various professional sports that are here. And SD Loyal has done a great job at building a strong community of soccer fans in San Diego. So we'll move on to the next slide, please. So just wanted to do a quick recap for the 2022 season. The SD Loyal still continues to play out of Torero Stadium at USD and will continue to do so for the next year. There are several potential stadiums that obviously could potentially be built in the nearer future, depending on what happens at the Midway District, and then potentially with Snapdragon as well. There's also some speculation in the news, I've probably seen it just in the last week, that Las Vegas and San Diego are considered the top 2 prospects for the MLS to come and promote up to a new MLS team in our region, which SD Loyal would be the obvious choice. So it's very likely that over the next year or so, we could see a lot more movement there specific to the potential rebranding or purchasing of San Diego Loyal and turning it into an MLS team. I wanted to also note here that the contract level that we're bringing in here is at $100,000 for the next season, and it is just for a single season because there is still some possibility that if the MLS comes and decides to create a team in San Diego, it would be a different entity that we'd be establishing a partnership with. It wouldn't be this current version of the San Diego Loyal. And although that this contract would come in at the the amount that could be approved by the CEO. We wanted to make sure to be as transparent as possible and bring this forward for the full board consideration. Also, we think it's a great thing to share. But getting back into the season recap, a lot of the value that we get out of the partnership with the SD Loyal is through their broadcast, specifically their 2 national broadcasts on ESPN and ESPN Plus, and then locally their broadcasts on Fox, CW, and Cox. They're the second in the USL, that is United Soccer League, in broadcast viewership, and they also broadcast in Spanish all of their 2022 matches through TV Azteca. We have incredible social media impressions across all social media channels in 2022, 28.3 million impressions, which is a 9% growth over 2021. They've also have a really a fantastic podcast that has over 13,000 downloads. SDCP was the sponsor specifically of the Loyal Select Academy, which is their youth soccer club. So again, making sure that we are doing what we can to build trust within the community and show community members that we're committed to investing in the things that their families and children are taking advantage of. And then we're also the sponsor of SDCP Corner Kicks. That's when it happens multiple times during the game and is announced prior to the corner kick itself. I want to show you just some pictures and some activation that happens at Torero Stadium. So first and foremost, we've got our banner that goes across Torero Stadium, printed out banner that's there for games. You'll see that at the back of the Loyal Select kits, the jerseys, our logo, that is our sponsorship of the Youth League. And then our activation at some game day matches where we were able to interact directly with fans. Next slide. So specific to this year's sponsorship, we're going to be the presenting partner of the 1886 initiative. This is a fantastic initiative that was developed by the SD Loyal. It's specific to the 18 cities and 86 neighborhoods that make up San Diego, and really closely ties in with what we care about from a local pride perspective and honoring the cultural differences between the neighborhoods that we have in the San Diego region, and really exploring and celebrating all the things that make us unique, but also all the things that make us similar as well, including our shared love for SD Loyal. As the presenting partner, we'll be engaged in a series of community-based events with SD Loyal as they work out in the community to build their fan base and to share the SD Loyal story. We'll also keep all the same broadcast and digital media exposure from previous sponsorships, as well as the fixed signage in the stadium. We're going to have increased on-site activation for boothing. We, again, really see the value of being in person, meeting with fans, sharing our story, who we are, and answering questions. And one of, I think, the most valuable things that we're going to be getting out of this season's sponsorship is the SD Loyal is going to produce an SDCP brand video during the 2023 season that we'll be able to use as sort of an evergreen piece of creative that will be able to be split up into 10, 15, 30-second spots that we can use as a commercial for SDCP, but also for the SD Loyal as well. There's going to be specific community initiatives that we'll be able to sponsor, or we'll be able to work in tandem with SD Loyal, as well as being SD Loyal's official power company, which again is just a great way for us to market San Diego Community Power and build off of the good name and the trust that this brand has already created within the community. So for FY 2023, we're requesting a sponsorship package of $100,000. And next slide. Yep. And so we're recommending to approve the partnership agreement with the San Diego Loyal for the 2023 season.
Great. Thank you again, Lee. Thank you for the good work in pulling this package together. I'll turn it. Oh, any public comment?
No public comment.
So I'll turn it over to the board. Questions or a motion?
Motion to approve item 15. So moved.
You have a question?
Yes, sir. The online or on-site boothing activation, is that for enrollment or what is that for?
Yeah, so we do any number of things for our on-site booth activation. The first and foremost is just informational. We have information about San Diego Community Power, as well as promotional items to attract people to the booth, to make them stop by and say hello. We can use it for enrollment purposes, and absolutely we'll be able to do that prior to the April and through the April enrollment. But first and foremost, it is about making sure that we're there, handing out information, meeting with customers, and explaining who we are and what we do.
It says here that the Torero on the 2022 game, soccer game, there were 4,500 at the Torero Stadium. What's the capacity of that stadium?
Yeah, that stadium's capacity, I believe, is around 5,000. So they're basically at capacity almost every single game.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you for asking those questions. We do have a motion on the floor by Mayor McCann.
I'll second.
We have a second by Parent. Not seeing any other questions or comments. Kimberly, call the vote.
Director Aguirre, how do you vote?
Yes.
Director Hensy, how do you vote?
Yes.
Director McCann, how do you vote?
Aye.
Director Parent, how do you vote?
Aye.
Director Yamani, how do you vote?
Nay.
Vice Chair Lawson Reamer, how do you vote?
Aye.
Chair LaCava, how do you vote?
Aye.
Motion carries with all directors voting yes, except Yamani voting no.
All right. Okay, thank you again, Lee, very much.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate it.
All three of these packages. So yes, Vice
So,
Chair.
yeah, just as maybe I have to go, so I just wanted to make my comment on the next item.
Oh, okay.
Your presentation.
I'll just introduce the item and we'll actually have Vice Chair speak first before you do the presentation. So it is item 16, approval of the policy platform. Vice Chair.
Yeah, sorry, my daughter's waiting in the car, so I have to go. But just thanks, you guys did a great job. I think I just put this out for discussion. I know I won't be here to see the item through. But it might be useful, given the conversation we just had about the hybrid model, that if we added to our ledge platform to support that bill that's coming, what was it?
SB 411.
SB 411. I just put this out for everyone's consideration. I know I won't be here to vote on it. It seems like aligned with what we'd all prefer, and it's not in our ledge platform currently. Other than that, I think you all did a wonderful job. So thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for juggling. Appreciate it, Vice Chair. Okay, we'll turn it over to Laura Fernandez to present the item.
Good evening. I'm here tonight recommending that the board approve our updated regulatory and legislative policy platform. Next slide, please. First, just a little bit of background. The platform was originally adopted by the SDCP Board of Directors on March 24th, 2022. In response to a request from Director Lawson Reamer, we updated the platform in November of 2022 to include language regarding taking into account the social cost of carbon. In general, this platform is intended to provide the SDCP policy team with guidance on policy matters at both the state and federal level, as well as before the legislatures and administrative agencies such as the Public Utilities Commission, the Energy Commission, as well as the Environmental Protection Agency. The platform is intended to guide the policy team in our everyday decision-making when engaging on policy matters. We don't need to come to the board for each and every decision. However, we do still intend to bring potentially controversial pieces of legislation before the board for discussion and possibly a vote on a position. As you may know, the bill introduction deadline in Sacramento was this past Friday, which is why we are now seeking approval for this updated policy platform. Over the last few weeks, the policy team has solicited input both internally and externally. We received input from SDCP staff as well as members of the Community Advisory Committee and SDCP board members. The result is a document that is contained in the agenda packet, and we have included both clean and redline versions so that what is new and changed is very clear to everyone in the public and hopefully in this room. We made changes to the document to accomplish the following. Next slide, please. I'm sorry for all the text. Problems with being a lawyer. We changed the title and the language throughout to clarify that the platform applies to regulatory policy actions as well as legislative items. We added language regarding supporting policies regarding infill, solar, and battery storage. We updated language to indicate our support for policies that internalize the externalities of carbon through true cost pricing and social cost accounting. We updated language in the resource adequacy section to more accurately reflect current issues in that policy space. We added language regarding supporting efforts to reform and expedite permitting processes for renewable energy development. We added language regarding supporting policies that ensure a just transition of workers into the non-fossil fuel economy. We added language regarding opposing legislation that disrupts or impairs the ability of CCAs to maintain or achieve financial stability. We added language to support policies and efforts to ensure that services and education are offered in languages other than English. We added language to support policies that would improve indoor air quality in the context of efficiency upgrades. And finally, we added a whole new section on rate affordability and modernization. And I'm happy to take any questions at this time.
You have any questions? And I think the recommendation is just to move.
Yes.
The other change, which I appreciate, I asked for was change it from policy platform to a regulatory and legislative policy. I would suggest, or any feedback on Vice Chair Lawson Reamer's suggestion to add?
Yeah, we can definitely take a look at the platform and see if we can add in things about the Brown Act, and we can definitely take a look at that bill in particular. Bring it, since it's not on the platform, we can potentially just bring it to the board for considering a position on that bill.
Okay. And do you need that in the motion?
For the policy platform, we just need you all to approve the policy platform.
Okay, and the addition with regards to supporting legislation to give flexibility on teleconference?
I would think we would need to put that on a future agenda.
Okay, we'll come back and double check on that. Any other board member comments or questions?
Honorable Chair.
Yes.
I just wanted to thank Laura Fernandez on this. As we know, Sacramento, there's a lot of regulatory information, a lot of bills that come out. And I really do appreciate Laura and her team being able to analyze those and making sure that we are focused on the mission of the San Diego Community Power. With that, I'll be happy to make the motion, Your Honorable Chair.
Okay, thank you, Mayor McCann. Do I have a second? I'll second. And I'll add my thanks as well. I know you coordinate with Government Affairs, the City of San Diego. Very much appreciate you taking that extra time and all the outreach that you did on this, Laura. So thank you very much. So without any questions or comments, call the vote. Oh, no public comment. Call the vote, please.
Director Aguirre, how do you vote?
Yes.
Director Hinsey, how do you vote?
Yes.
Director McCann, how do you vote?
Aye.
Director Parent, how do you vote?
Aye.
Director Yamani, how do you vote?
Aye.
Chair LaCava, how do you vote?
Aye.
Motion carries with all directors voting yes.
Great, thank you. So actually, can I ask a procedural question that I should have asked before? These receiving files, we don't actually need a motion on those, do we?
No, you're not.
As long as there's no objections. Okay. So one, great work, everybody. We're moving through the very big agenda very quickly. So we will now go to item 17, a presentation on residential enrollment. As you know, we're now going to be rolling out to both the unincorporated area, San Diego County, as well as National City. And we'll turn it over to Jen LeBron, who is participating remotely.
Yes, good evening, Chair, Vice Chair, and members of the board. I promise to keep pace with my colleagues as we go through this, and happy to answer any questions you may have. As you know, on April 1st, San Diego Community Power will be enrolling customers in National City and the unincorporated areas of San Diego County, as the Chair mentioned. We're engaging in a variety of public relations and marketing activities specific to enrollment to drive awareness and minimize opt-outs while reinforcing our brand with current customers. We're taking a comprehensive approach that couples earned media and paid media opportunities to get the word out. The first set of 4 mailers went out to customers on February 1st, which truly kicked off our outreach efforts. Next slide, please. We have already begun using earned media to get the word out to our customers with stories in local papers in Fallbrook and Ramona, as well as our CEO, Karen Burns, going on KUSI last week to provide factual information about our organization. As we get closer to April 1st, we'll be making the rounds on TV stations, holding a press conference, and participating in news stories in publications large and small. We also have op-eds that will be featured in local papers from our Community Advisory Committee representatives, Aida Castaneda and Dr. Peter Anderson from National City and San Diego County, respectively. We are also taking a proactive approach with paid media. Oh, you already went to the next slide. Beginning on March 13th, we will have billboards in high traffic areas that will run through June. These billboards will not only help our new customers learn that we are serving them, but reinforce our brand with existing customers as well. Next slide. We're also using a door hanger campaign to reach out to our customers that you can see here on the right. We're also going to have a robust online campaign that focuses on ads on Facebook and Instagram, 2 social media platforms that performed very well during our last enrollment period. We will also be using banner ads that will appear on various sites across the internet that are geofenced to appear for users in our new member agencies. Next slide, please. It was important to us to have these ads in multiple languages since large portions of our new customers speak Spanish, Tagalog, or Arabic. Next slide, please. These online ads will be tailored to those audiences. We're also featuring ads in various languages in local newspapers such as the Filipino Press, and have radio ads on Univision Radio. Additional radio ads in English will be featured on KPBS and other streaming platforms. Next slide, please. The total cost of these efforts is $288,000, a comparable amount to what we spent on our last round of enrollments. We're now asking that you receive and file this presentation on the residential enrollment for San Diego County and National City. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Jen. Thank you for your good work on this and the entire team. Any public comment?
No public comment.
Public comment. This is a receive and file, so we don't need a motion. Is there any questions you have? Yes, Mary Gary.
Quick comment. I mentioned this during my briefing. Excellent work. I think that I just strongly encourage us to keep doing that, especially when it comes to writing op-eds, not just in the local papers, but in broader publications. I think it's super important in the context of fighting disinformation or misconceptions. We've seen other agencies that go with that. And I just want to encourage us to continue to have this proactive approach, especially in the media outlets. So that's it.
That's well taken. And any lessons learned from the rollouts that we did last year? I mean, obviously the county is very spread out. We have multiple languages in both jurisdictions.
Certainly. One of the things that we took away from our enrollments last year was where we should focus our online advertisements. So last year, we also looked at Nextdoor and Twitter, but realized we weren't getting the reach nor the engagement that we were really looking for. So we refocused our efforts elsewhere. We also learned that we had a lot of success with high impression rates from billboards. So we basically doubled the amount of time that we are going to be having these ads up. So they extend not just through the initial enrollment period in April, but go all the way through June. We've also recognized through the time that we've been in existence that there's different types of messaging that certainly works with different audiences. And so, we recognize that folks think about community power in a lot of different ways, but we certainly are very big on not only sustainability, but the power of choice that goes right back into the hands of people. So happy to answer any additional questions you may have.
Okay. Well, you're clearly doing good work. One of the consent items talks about opt-out rates, and we're still generally in the 95% rate. I think the good work of staff, the customer service, the value proposition, and the good work we continue to do in terms of spreading our brand really is paying off and very good work. So I appreciate your comment. So if there's no other comments, without objection, we'll just receive and file the report. Thank you very much, Jen.
Thank you.
Now we'll go to item 18, which is also receive and file information item, community power plan update. And I think we've got a team approach here, or is it just you, Colin?
Just me,
Okay.
but I'm representing the teams.
All right, so there we go. All right.
All the work I present is representing the team and the community power plan that really have been driven by Nelson Lamelli and Alex Gerlach, as well as Tessa Tobar and the rest of the team. So I'm just representing them here today. As you all heard in the board orientation last month, the community power plan is our 5-year strategic plan for customer energy programs. We talked at length about it during the board orientation, and the diagram on the screen there shows kind of how we put it together and our approach. So I won't go over that again here today, but today we're here mostly to tell you about us bringing the plan open for public comment and kind of some of the next steps that will lead us to bringing you a final plan for adoption here in a few months. Next slide. So we are coming to the end of a fairly long time frame here. We started nearly 9 months ago. And we are to the point where, like I mentioned, we're releasing the draft plan here in the month of March. We will be out in your communities, engaging with your residents and your business owners, and looking forward to getting feedback on that plan. Because of the timing of the strategic planning session, which is happening in April, we're actually going to be able to incorporate the feedback from the public comment period when we bring the plan to you all for a deep dive. Today, at the end of a long meeting, it's not the intent to do that deep dive on the plan and the programs. We'll save that for a dedicated session in the planning session that we have in April. So just to recap here, we looked at the 5-year program strategy really in tranches. So short-term, midterm, long-term, and identifying different attributes for mostly tied to funding and kind of complexity of putting together plans, putting together programs. Go to the next slide. So the short-term strategy, this is programs that allow us to fill immediate needs that we heard during our engagement, really helping customers become more aware of their energy use and aware of programs that are out there. And then to some extent, helping them actually apply for those programs. So we know there's available programs that are underutilized, and we want to help fix that. This short-term timeframe is also when we're going to be launching programs that really use external funding to the best case possible, or very minimal in SDCP funding as we look to build our reserves. And it's also the time we get to kick the tires on some of the midterm programs. So the midterm programs starting in 2 fiscal years from now, that's where we hope to have some of our external funding really developed. I'm going to talk about the regional energy network in a few minutes. And we feel like we'll be much better positioned to come to the board and recommend directing internal revenues back into customers, back to our communities via those programs. So the program types here are listed in alphabetical order, kind of grouped by technology type. So building electrification, thinking about appliance swaps and heat pump technologies, really following the state's lead there, which is investing significantly in heat pumps, and distributed energy resources, both from the storage side, but thinking about demand response as well. Energy efficiency, obviously, is the focus of the regional energy network. And then supporting the electrification of the transportation sector, whether it be chargers or light, medium, heavy duty vehicle adoption. Next slide. So we'll talk in depth about the program types in April, but one thing we did want to highlight for you all here that is a commitment that we're proposing in the draft plan, and that's this commitment towards communities of concern. This commitment is part of who we are in our mission and vision. It's also in our JPA. But so what does that mean actually from a program standpoint? It means we're going to design programs with communities of concern participation in mind. So if we can design a program explicitly thinking about the application process, the marketing, if we can design this so the most vulnerable customers can partake in that program, then we know that then those customers who have resources should be able to also participate. It also means that we're proposing to commit 50% of programs non-administrative budget to allocating that to participation from communities of concern. This threshold is existing some state funding programs. I believe we are would be the first CCA to have a threshold like this, or a commitment to allocating funding to communities of concern. It's important to note that communities of concern, we define those as an agency as the top 25 scoring areas from the state's CalEnviro screen tool. And additionally, when member agencies go out and identify their own census tracts, we incorporate those census tracts as communities of concern. We have heard that it could be helpful if we could support member agencies in identifying communities of concern. We have a community grant program that the board adopted in December. We envision a similar member agency grant program that we'll bring to you in future months. And we would be providing funding to member agencies to implement CAPS in any number of ways, one of which could be to go through the process to identify communities of concern the way other member agencies have done. The next steps I mentioned, we have a 30-day public comment period that's supposed to start in March. We're using a tool that was used by the city of San Diego when they updated their climate action plan. It's called Conveo. It's an interactive way for users to get in and drop comments or like other comments that people have used. It was positively received by the city. We're going to, like I mentioned, we're going to be in your communities. We're welcome to take suggestions on groups to engage with, to go back to the community to get their thoughts on what we've drafted. We made the same request to the advisory committee. So open to take suggestions now or after the fact, the email. And then again, I mentioned we're going to do that deep dive on the plan with you all in April. And the hope would be to bring a final draft for adoption consideration in the May board meeting. And that concludes my presentation and the update.
Great. Thank you, Colin. You've been putting a lot of work in, your team's been putting a lot of work in, and thank you for the progress you've been making. This is an information item. Any questions or comments? It looks like there's going to be at least a couple of more opportunities for the board members to weigh in, or they can always contact you, I suspect. So
yeah, absolutely.
Okay, not seeing any hands raised. Anybody from the public? Without objection, we'll just receive and file the update. Thank you very much, Colin. And we'll go back to you for the Regional Energy Network Program.
All right. So again, I mentioned this in January at the board orientation as well, and I wanted to provide an update. We're starting a very long process. So kudos to my colleague Sheena Tran, who's really our REN expert. She's on the line. If we get any questions that are technical and at all, I'll have to tap her because this is really her expertise. During some of the briefings, I get questions about, well, what is a REN? And I recognize we're gonna have to do a lot of education. It is another acronym and another funding source that's driven by the state. So I thought it would be good to spend just 1 minute talking about that. So in 2012, the Public Utilities Commission effectively went out to local governments and asked them to work together to create a new model for administering energy efficiency programs. The IOUs in the state have decades of administering energy efficiency programs. I think SDG&E has a $300+ million program, a 4-year program that's being considered right now. The PUC back in 2012 thought that there was a need for a different model for energy efficiency programs that was driven by local governments, not by investor-owned utilities necessarily. And part of that is because they were looking for criteria specifically for activities that utilities could not do or did not intend to do. One of those reasons is that those energy efficiency programs that investor-owned utilities operate are in most parts are required. They have very strict cost effectiveness requirements. And in some cases, those cost effectiveness requirements prohibit the utilities from effectively serving all of the customers, and most notably customers in hard to reach markets. So those are some of the criteria for establishing the REN. They established in 2012, and I'll show you how it has rolled out since then. 2012, SoCal REN and Bay REN were established. SoCal REN is run by LA County. It serves several hundred cities and has a operating budget of approximately 23 million this year. Bay REN is run by ABAG, so it's the 9 Bay Area counties and 100 cities with approximately $26 million operating budget for the year. Tri-County REN or 3C REN, it's 3 coastal counties there, Ventura, Santa Barbara, and San Luis Obispo. And then most recently, IREN was approved. This is was coordinated by 3 councils of governments, the Western Riverside, San Bernardino, Coachella Valley. And then lastly, there's one REN that's pending, the rural REN, which is very unique, and it's you can kind of see in the map there. It's led by a CCA up in the northern coast. So Red Coast Energy Authority is leading the formation of this REN. You can see here that there's overlaps between RENs. Most notably, you can see that IREN is overlaps almost entirely with SoCal REN. They're able to overlap because they're offering different programs. I'll talk about the programs in just a second. You'll also notice that we have no overlap. We have no REN at all. We're the only densely populated region of the state that doesn't have this opportunity for our customers and for our residents. And we think that needs to change. And so that's why we're undertaking this big effort. Next slide. So I mentioned the programs, they effectively serve energy efficiency programs across all sectors, residential, public sector, and commercial. And there's a big focus on workforce education and training, which we feel part of our mission and vision is we feel I need to focus on that here and looking to identify external sources to do it. I wanted to highlight the public sector programs. These are programs that specifically target your member agencies and other agencies in the region. And so everything from kind of doing energy audits to a variety of other programs specifically targeting the public sector. We'll get into the weeds on that in future presentations, but for now we can go to the next slide. So to access this kind of high dollar amount and bring these programs to the region, the CPUC requires us to do our due diligence. I won't read the requirements, but it's extensive to say the least. So Sheena and the team and the rest of us here at STCP have our work cut out for us, but we're committed to doing so. Next slide. So here's the timeline. We're very beginning of the process in this kind of administrative planning state. We plan to bring on a consultant to assist us to develop the business plan. And we expect to submit the business plan at the end of this year. IREN was approved approximately 9 months. It was in the approval process at the PUC for, like I said, about 9 months. So using that as a benchmark, we could expect to be approved sometime toward the latter half of 2024. So realistically, we'd be starting programs serving your residents anywhere 18 to 24 months. So it's still a long way ahead of us, but if there's a big pot of gold, if you will, at the end of the rainbow. So that's what we're working towards. The most immediate next step, like I mentioned, we have a RFP that's open now for consultant. We need to determine our governance structure. We established a partnership with the San Diego Regional Climate Collaborative. I believe all of your member agencies have staff who attend, are members of the Climate Collaborative. We view that as a really good place to have a regional conversation about this. We need to ramp up our coordination with SDG&E and ensure that the programs we're offering don't unnecessarily duplicate their work. And then we're committed to providing regular updates to the advisory committee and the board as you all see fit. That concludes my item.
Well, thank you, Colin. Thank you for the good work you've done so far on this and the entire team that has done on this. It does get confusing. All these things have kind of similar names and it's a little hard to split them up in the different missions they have. Any questions or comments from the board? This is information, Mayor Gary.
How much would it cost us to hire?
We have $210,000 in the budget this year already identified for a consultant, which we expect to have on for anywhere from 18 to 24 months.
Okay.
Okay.
Thank you.
That was approved in this fiscal year budget.
And do we see that San Diego Community Power going forward alone on this and the formation of this, or find a partner?
No, the RENs are regional and by design. That it's a little bit confusing when you look at the existing RENs because some were established under different rules. So LA County operates as LA County, but the most recent RENs, you'll see they're more of a group of public agencies. So this is not intended to be it's not allowed to be an SDCP only. And really, we feel like it's the most equitable and most inclusive approach would be to look for a countywide approach. So that'll be part of that regional conversation, but we do expect that the REN will be beyond the territory of just SDCP. And that's why we really need to think through the governance, legality, and kind of the money flowing and make sure we're dotting all our I's and crossing T's.
And Colin,
Go ahead. No, go ahead.
Colin, for the REN programs, are these ratepayer funded?
They are.
Okay, thanks.
Within the existing rate structure.
They're funded by the public purpose charge. So the same pot of funding that funds the existing SDG&E energy efficiency programs.
Yeah, okay.
And I assume if formation is successful, that any administrative costs that as San Diego Community Power would be expending would be captured through that annual allocation.
Yeah, PSC will reimburse all of our administrative costs. We're getting ready to launch a green tariff program, or two programs actually similar to that. The staff, marketing, consulting costs are all be covered by the PSC.
Okay. And not seeing any other questions or comments.
We have a public comment.
Oh, we have a public comment.
Tom Summers, you have 3 minutes. Tom, can you hear us?
Well, sorry about that, Tom. I'm not sure what the technology problem is. So this was an information item without objection. We'll just receive and file it. Again, thank you, Colin, the entire team for the good works on both items. Well, moving right along, we're on the last agenda item, item 20. This is a Community Advisory Committee quarterly report, and I see we have Victoria here.
Thank you so much. Honestly, I used to be on the Community Advisory Committee, so just thank you to all of you for voting for the stipend earlier in this meeting. So thank you guys to all of you.
Are you going to do the report, or is Eddie?
Yes.
Okay.
Eddie was going to, but he's not feeling well today,
Oh.
so I'll be presenting.
All right. Please proceed.
So the recommendation is to receive and file the quarterly report for San Diego Community Power's Community Advisory Committee. And if you can go to the next slide. This is something that we started when we first founded the advisory committee. In SDCP's JPA, it states that the primary purpose of the CAC or Community Advisory Committee shall be to advise the board of directors and provide for venue for ongoing citizen support and engagement in the strategic direction, goals, and programs of SDCP. And so this quarterly report is going to be from November, December, January. And if we go to the next slide, I can just give you a little update on some of the activities that the advisory committee participated in. This does not include everything that they did, but I did give a pretty detailed report on the agenda packet. But pretty much they were able to provide community-based guidance on the CPUC high distributed energy resources proceedings. And they received a lot of updates and provided feedback on the launch and development of the community power plant. And they also, with their community advisory committee work plan ad hoc committee, they created their work plan and they developed it, they brought it back and they voted on it. And they recommended what their priorities would be for this next year. And they also provided input on San Diego Community Power's rate development policy. They provided updates and input on SDCP's Community Clean Energy Innovation Grants. They received an update on San Diego Community Power's rate setting process. And they received updates on phase 4 enrollment for National City and the County of San Diego. So if you can go to the next slide, that pretty much concludes what they did for the past couple of months. We didn't have a meeting in December because there wasn't a lot to report on. And then currently we have 3 vacancies on our advisory committee. There's one in National City, one in the county, and we just got another one in the Mesa. And so we already have applications out. Somebody from Imperial Beach did apply. We have a few from the county and from La Mesa as well. And so I can send that to all of you later. If you'd like to appoint them at the next meeting.
Thank you for that report. Victoria, thank you so you actually support CAC in their meetings. So thank you for that. And for those of you who don't know, Eddie is Eddie Price. He is one of the appointees from the city of San Diego, and he's currently the chair of that. So we wish him well. Pass that along. Any questions or comments on the report?
Just a quick question about the procedure for appointing members. How does that work?
So at the last community advisory committee, a member from La Mesa, Jen Dirks, she during the end of the meeting, she said that she was going to resign. And so then on our website, we'll put that there's a vacancy, and then we already have an application out for county, Imperial Beach and La Mesa. And so somebody that either lives in that community or works and has a business in that community can apply. It's really very not too many questions, very simple. They just apply, and then we will get those applications from who is eligible, whether they live in that area or pretty much live in that area or have a business, and then we'll send you all of those responses to the specific member agency. And then make sure that you have enough time. And then if you wanted to add it to the next meeting or the meeting after, then you could appoint them. But
Are they appointed by our councils?
you would be the person to appoint because you are the director, and Mayor Geary, you would be the person for Imperial Beach, and then Vice Chair Supervisor Lawson Reamer would appoint for the county.
You would nominate subject to approval by the board.
Yeah.
Okay, thanks.
So, okay, thank you. Yes.
You said there's one vacancy for National City.
Imperial Beach, County of San Diego, and La Mesa.
Okay, sorry. Thank you so much.
But there will be, the terms will be over July 1st. So all 7 areas will have a term that could be open. So there will be a potential vacancy in National City if that member doesn't get reappointed by you.
Council. Okay, thank you.
Same
Thank you,
thing.
Mr. Chairman.
Good to know.
Good to know. It might be helpful to send out a reminder to all the board members. So
Are there term limits?
Yeah.
What's happening?
It's just the term time. Okay. And so the last term ended in 2022, and then they were reappointed. And so then this next term, we have it staggered, so it's a little less chaotic. And so a lot of the community advisory committee members whose terms would be up, I reached out. Most of them are interested in being reappointed. And so just Vincentitas is interested.
Okay.
Thank you, Victoria. Without objection, we'll go ahead and receive and file this report. Thank you again for that good work. So with that, if it wasn't obvious, Karen Burns, our CEO, is not here tonight. And so I'll turn it over to our Chief Financial Operations Officer, Dr. Eric Washington. Any reports to make?
Yes, Chair, thank you so much. And thank you again, directors, for your time. For the sake of time, I'll keep my remarks brief. But I wanted to highlight just the continued efforts of our staff and our outreach activities, our sponsorship type activities, and things that we have in the pipeline to make sure that our brand recognition continues to expand and throughout our region, including one item that was mentioned tonight by Jen LeBron, our Director of Marketing and Outreach, where KUSI featured our Chief Executive Officer, Karen Burns, in informational interview to really explain and expand on what San Diego Community Power actually contributes to our community. Also, we hosted a recognition dinner for our Power 100 champions, which have been huge in terms of assisting us in expanding their brand recognition, and including some of the partnership agreements that we discussed and that the board approved tonight. So in addition to that, just some of the actions that the board took at our last meeting that really is continuing to set us up to achieve our mission and our vision, the approval of the rate setting process, which informed the board that we discussed and the board approved tonight through the rate setting process, including the board's approval of $150 million line of credit with JP Morgan that we closed on this past Friday. So we now have access to those resources, as well as an approval for an amendment to one of our power purchase agreements. So all of those things really contribute to us, San Diego Community Power, being able to continue to do that which we were purposed to do. And then lastly, really acknowledging our staff and the board of directors for the direction and support that really sets us up to continue to expand our program throughout the region. And then lastly, we are still hiring, lots of positions posted on our website. Please check out the website for details, and that'll conclude my report, Chairman.
Well, thank you for your report and the good work that you do and Karen does. Karen's on a well-deserved vacation. Hard to imagine how much work you all have done in the less than a year since she was retained. So let's see, General Counsel, anything to report beyond?
We'll keep you abreast if the virtual bills change. One's an urgency bill, so maybe you see some movement.
All right.
Report.
Thank you, Ron.
Thank you.
Also an opportunity for directors, if there's support about what your individual cities are doing. This is a moment to offer that. And not seeing any. Will that bring?
I know, we're like.
What are we doing?
So much.
We're doing a lot. We're doing a lot. Trying to get a little competitive spirit going. So, all right, with that brings us to the end of the agenda. I appreciate the board members. This was a particularly long one. We got through a lot of good stuff. And it's really a testament to the staff here at Community Power. There's an awful lot of things that we don't see that takes to bring all this stuff together in pulling this together. So this is our last meeting under the old rules, the pandemic rules. So our next meeting is going to be in person, subject to the Brown Act rules that we adopted. And it will be in person at the San Diego City Municipal Operations Center, sometimes called MOC. If you hear that, that's what that is. We certainly want to thank Kimberly and Chris and everybody at city staff. Ryan gave a little nudge to make that happen. And we will, as the board has indicated, set that up as a hybrid for the public. And again, as we talked, we'll be allowed to board members will be able to either use the Brown Act or the AB 2449 there. So let us know if you're not going to be able to make it and how you want to participate. And with that, we're adjourned. Thank you.